All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, welcome to the stakeholder kickoff or stakeholder meeting for the US 93 I-40 West Kingman TI project. I'm Craig Rigolski. I'm the project manager with the Arizona Department of Transportation. You may remember Adam McGuire. He was the former project manager with ADOT. He's since moved on to another group within the agency, so I've recently stepped in as the PM. Thank you all for coming. We want to kind of, start the meeting out by recognizing any elected officials that may have come in to the meeting. If you guys want to stand up or not, and introduce yourself. Thank you for making it out to this meeting today.
Am I not supposed to be here?
No, you are. Thank you very much for coming. And thanks to Mojave County for letting us use this fine complex. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Berwin with Jacobs Engineering. They're doing the development for the change of access report, and he's going to give an update on where we're at with the project.
It's amazing how many things we're going to put on your agenda today now that you're here and you've agreed to participate in all of our details. We'll have a lot of fun at your expense. Is that okay?
It's okay, but I can't vote on anything because that would recruit myself.
Oh, well, so much for those ideas. So I want to thank you all for showing up. We started in February with a kickoff meeting to talk about the West Kingman improvements. At that time, we had shared with you some ideas of some of the changes that we would be making and what the footprint would look like. If the exhibits that you have as handouts look remarkably similar, it's because as we've gone through and vetted the alignments, most of those changes are being incorporated, and we don't see any objections to them. So the basic footprint that you see on the first page, the basic footprint that you see on the screen on the top is pretty similar to what we had shared with you before. Understand that our improvements are going to be built into two phases. And so the initial construction basically takes into account the traffic movements from Las Vegas to Phoenix, if you will, and the improvements that'll be eventually connecting to the south. Those will be built at a later time. They're shown on the figure on the screen in the red dashes. So the two loop ramps heading towards I-40 and heading south will be built at a later time. That later time is going to be when the traffic warrants essentially demand that we do a more improved system than using Beale Street as we currently are using today. So that'll be a few years, but that's going to be shown into the future. As we've talked about on the various slides you have an agenda that's included. What we've done since we've met with you last is we've basically made certain that the existing design or the proposed design meets all of the design standards. From a design standpoint, the good news is we don't have to have any design exceptions for any of the new improvements. Everything meets standards and codes. We've revised the alignments to meet with the final mapping, the survey that's been completed to make all of this fit to the ground. We've developed our initial profiles to do the modeling for the earthwork to see how these improvements will fit into the ground. And we're going to show you a couple of slides that if you can use your imagination, you might be able to see how this will fit into the terrain and into the topography. And then we're working on our traffic report that we'll ultimately be providing to federal highways. If you're not familiar, since this is an interstate system, we have to get approval from federal highways to make a change into how the access is provided to the interstate system. This particular project, they're ultimately going to see this as an I-11 to I-40 interchange, and so these improvements are being viewed not only by the regional federal highway, but also national. And so it'll be going up to Washington, D.C. with the improvements. We have recently updated all of the traffic numbers. We have updated the modeling. The good news is that everything that we've proposed in terms of the ramps, the weaves, the merging that's shown on these exhibits, it works well. The one thing that wasn't shown in the original design concept report is that these improvements weren't originally scheduled to go as far to the north as we are currently showing them. And so on the screen in front of you, you can, it might be a little bit light, but we were initially going to basically stop the improvements north of Clack Canyon and actually just north of the White Cliffs bridges and tie back into existing I-40. We're now including our improvements to go all the way up to Stockton Hill. And so if you're familiar with how today it's 2 lanes in each direction from Stockton Hill to Beale Street, it'll be 3 lanes as we connect to the improvements, the ramps, and then going up to Stockton Hill. It'll be an auxiliary lane, so it'll drop as we approach the east side of Stockton Hill and merge right in with the off-ramp or the on-ramp. So as you get on and off those 2 respective ramps, it'll appear like you're just transitioning right onto the freeway as opposed to merging and getting into the other lanes. So our improvements have extended to the north a little bit. If we didn't build those auxiliary lanes, we couldn't get the facility to function in the future traffic demands. As the area continues to grow, the volume of traffic would exceed the capacity of the interchange. And so those are some of the changes that we were having to make. On the agenda, I put some issues that we're right now looking at in terms of where's the design being focused, what are some of the issues that we're considering with the improvements that are being done. The first one, it said, is the I-40 westbound and eastbound improvements. Well, talked about Stockton Hill. The last point on there, it says if we didn't, or the interchange capacity will reach a level of service D. If you're in traffic speak, for those of you that don't do level of service, it just tries to identify how busy the roadway system will be. Level of service D is still an acceptable solution for how many cars are on it, but it's going to be comfortably busy. I guess that's the best way I would describe it. Not overwhelmed, but certainly within its capacity. The next item that we show on the issues list is stockpile materials and earthwork balance. One of the things that we're going to be doing on this particular project is mining and giving the opportunity to use some of the materials that we're cutting through on the mountains and using it as aggregate in the project. ADOT has done some exploration, and the very first hill that is immediately to the, I guess you'd say, the southwest of Clack Canyon is particularly hard rock, and that material will work for our aggregates. And so we're actually going to be saving some money by processing that material and that cut from the rest of our project. Another issue on the earthwork, since we've received the updated surveys and we've tweaked the geometry of the project, well, in plan view, it kind of looks like it's in the same spot as we have shown you in the past. From a vertical profile, we initially had almost 500,000 cubic yards of waste in the DCR, and right now we're approaching a balanced project, at least on phase 1. We're still working on modeling phase 2. But that just simply means the amount of cut and the amount of fill are coming out to what we need to see so that we're not wasting any extra material. So that's a good thing. The channel box limitations, there's an item in there. And so this is an interesting topic. And so we shared this with our in-house design folks. Wanted to share this with you as this is a local question that we're raising. It's a question I'm sharing with you. I don't necessarily have a solution. Maybe it's not a problem, but we just want to share it with you. Oops, I guess I got my slides out of order. Well, let me just change one thing back. We talked about the material source. I didn't show a slide for it. Up on the screen, we are showing you a picture of the hill that is immediately to the southwest of Clack Canyon. That's the material I was just talking about, where we're trying to mine some of that material. We had a picture, three-dimensional picture that kind of just shows how we're cutting into the sides of the slope. So if you can kind of use your 3D hat. Everyone right now is used to seeing fantastic animations. This is not a fantastic animation, but in engineering speak, it shows how we're going to cut into the hill and how we're going to use some of that material. The good news is for us is it doesn't, it's not going to be a huge, large face like some of the other cuts on I-40. We're looking in the 40 to 50 foot range in terms of the cuts, and it blends in well and fitting in with the two alignments that we have. So then the question of the channel and the box culverts are coming up. The existing channel parallel to US 93, if you were to take a hike through that canyon, it's rather steep and abrupt. It has some nice rocks and boulders in it, meaning it's certainly conveying not only water but some other materials when it's flowing full. A scarier part is that some of these pictures kind of imply that it's getting really close to going underneath the roadway as opposed to adjacent to the roadway. So we have some erosion to take care of as far as our improvements are concerned. Where we're building the connection between US 93 and these improvements is it happens to coincide where some of this erosion is occurring. So we're in the vicinity of fixing it. And so what we had proposed to show and proposed to build is, as we do our improvements over the drainage channel, our intent was to put in some large box culverts and simply convey the drainage under the roadway. The slide that's on the screen right now, it shows the interchange improvements, the dark blue lines that are showing some parallel features. That's a couple of series of box culverts that are located in the channel itself. No big difference from any other highway project. They all include box culverts and they all have drainage that has to cross the roadway. The only reason we're bringing this up on this particular project as a question is we're really close to Kingman. We're really close to potential pedestrians. And any day, anytime anymore where we build a shade structure, that's what some people consider a box culvert to be, then this might be a potential place of respite from the heat and the winds that occasionally occur here in Kingman. I don't mean to make light of the fact that there could be a problem with conflicts as to how we build this. However, we have to convey the drainage in that channel and get through the interchange. And so right now, our most, if you will, the most routine and the most direct approach is to build the box culvert. There's a question as to, can we prevent people from getting into the box? Well, if you were to see the size of the rocks that are flowing in the channel, if we were to put some kind of a grate, it would have to pass the debris or else the channel would get blocked during a major storm event. Most people are about the size of some of those rocks. I could fit into the debris holes that the size of those rocks are. So it wouldn't necessarily stop people, and it's a risk if we were to try and put a grate. So we really can't put a grate on it. The size of the box culverts that we're talking about are approximately 2 10-foot wide structures, approximately 8 foot tall. We need to have them that large so that we can put our maintenance equipment through them to get rid of the debris should debris accumulate in the boxes over time. So in between the ramps that you see on the screen, there's 3 box culverts shown. There's 2 long ones, and in the middle of the long ones you see a couple of head walls that are opposing each other. You might call that a skylight. You might just call that a simple opening. If you've ever walked down a long box culvert, it turns into a tunnel, and then it's hard to see. It becomes very dark inside. So we've got an opening in the middle where we can have an opening, so it'll allow some light to go into the structure. As it goes underneath US 93, there's a much larger opening. There's a shorter box that goes underneath the remaining ramp. We are sharing this with you, and we're just throwing it out to both ADOT and to our partners if there's any other suggestions outside of a box that we need to consider. We don't believe that there's a better solution, but we don't wish to create an issue with people being in the box and a nuisance for that. And so since we're here to share information, we just share the information and let it be known, and then we're trying to move on with different design ideas for this. If we were to raise the roadway profile and put a bridge through here and make it very large and open, that's always a possibility, but then we're escalating the cost of the construction considerably to make these large bridges, and I don't think we'd necessarily solve the problem. We just have a bigger shade structure. This way we could actually get the drainage through. It does it the most efficient means, and it's traditionally done this way, so that's why we're showing it. But again, I wanted to bring this to your attention and share with you some of the possibilities. The other thing that from an ADOT standpoint, we showed a kink in the box. Like we have in Laughlin and Bullhead City, we wouldn't actually put a kink. We'd make it a radial box so that the debris couldn't get stuck in a kink. So it'll actually turn out to be a radial box structure. But that's how it's fitting. One of the ideas that was brought up at downtown, instead of putting in the boxes, why don't we consider relocating the entire channel and building it, if you will, to the north of the ramp in between Fort Beale Road and our system ramp. The only problem with doing something like that is there's an awful lot of rock and an awful lot of mountain in between there, and that's why the channel is where it is today. But that is something that we will look at doing just to see what the cost comparisons are from trying to find another way to build that channel. If we were in a situation where that material was great rock and we could use it for our material sources, that would be an added benefit. Unfortunately, our understanding is these are volcanic tufts, and while it looks like rock, it acts like rock, it doesn't hold up like rock for our material sources, so we can't use it in the roadway other than just embankment. So those are some challenges that we were experiencing associated with that. When we came during the field review, also earlier in February, March, we're talking about our improvements are now being extended almost all the way up to Stockton Hill. And so we're crossing over where the White Cliff bridges are today. So here's a picture of what the two bridges that are over White Cliff Road. We had done some chatting with the cities and the counties on this particular road, and we're sharing what we've heard from you, but we're asking that you still consider the possibilities of a change here. We're not considering moving the road, we're not considering of taking the road away, but right now there are two very long bridge structures that cross over White Cliffs Road. And one of the possibilities we had was to take those bridges out when we widened them and put a large precast box, or excuse me, arch in its place. Right now that's not part of our improvements, but that would be a cost savings approach for us, and that we may want to reconsider in the future if we have to do a cost comparison to see how improving the improvements to Stockton Hill, how can we find ways to fund it? The challenge is if we were to widen we have to widen a lane on both sides of those bridges to the south. So we'll be widening both of those structures, but we have to span that entire canyon as it's shown today. If we were to replace it with an arch culvert, we could basically provide a wide enough opening for the roadway, but the precast arch would be a lot more efficient and cost-effective solution for the opening. It may be that the city and the county has other plans for the road, and so we're going to ask that you continue to keep us in the loop as to what you see as improvements going on to this particular road, so we can make certain that we can accommodate those improvements and ensure that what you have in the future is going to be what your needs are meeting. Again, it's not something we're changing. I just wanted to bring it to your attention on things that we're considering and reviewing. So those are where our changes are and how they're fitting into the roadway prism. As we fit to the rest of the roadway corridor, in your packet and on the screens, we put a couple of three-dimensional models. Again, this is if you were looking at the roadway almost directly over us right now and looking towards the north end of the project, not at Stockton Hill, but at Clack Canyon. That's the cut on the face that we're talking about just to the southwest of Clack Canyon, and as it proceeds to the west, how we're fitting into the landform. If you were to look over Clack Canyon and head and looking over at US 93, this is kind of what it looks like if we were heading in the other direction. All of our improvements on 93 are basically being made to the south. What that means is we're basically holding the edge of pavement on US 93 and widening everything into the cut that's to the south of existing 93. Our whole goal is to minimize the amount of impacts to traffic while we're doing the construction. This way we believe that we can maintain our traffic with the least amount of impacts, and also the least amount of impacts ultimately to that wash that I was showing you in the earlier slides, keeping the wash open. The concept that we have does not include a formal interchange per se like a half diamond, but we have slip ramps that take you on and off from Beale Street and transition to US 93. If I understand, if you're not colorblind and you see colors the way that I do, there's a purple strip on this screen image, and or that short little wiggle in the middle of it, that would be the on-ramp that would be coming on from Beale Street. You would cross underneath US 93 and tie back into 93 to head north and heading towards Las Vegas. The light orange on the opposite side is how it would go around 93 and tie into Beale Street and have the interchange for 93 go in the middle. And so that's how the two roadways are going to be transitioning. As we shared with you in the kickoff meeting, in between on the far left of the screen that you see, between the light orange on the top and the dark maroon or purple, there's a large area that we might be able to do some kind of a monument treatment or a gateway treatment for the city and county as you're leaving the freeway and you're getting back onto Beale Street, kind of a gateway and an entry feature, if you will, into the community. There'll be some room there that's been done on other projects that we might be able to accommodate here. So still something that we're keeping in mind. The improvements that we're showing in terms of the cuts, yeah, they're certainly going to be added to the cuts, but they're not going to look too dissimilar to what you see today. So the end results are going to be a little bit comparable. So that's how the improvements will be fitting. That's how our alignments are looking. Some of you folks here are with agencies that are waiting for our environmental document. We have defined now, if you will, what the footprint of the improvements are going to be with the horizontal, the vertical alignments, and the catch points. And so with the environmental clearance, we are now going to be working with our environmental team to start doing the technical reports for the biological, the cultural, air, noise, and waters of the U.S. as those documents start to be developed and completed. Those documents were all created, if you will, in 2013-14 for the earlier environmental efforts that were completed. It's just that since that time, these documents have to be updated to ensure that all of the criteria are still being met. We've also expanded our project towards Stockton Hill. That being said, all of the improvements north of where we're extending it are within the existing ADOT right-of-way. So we are hopeful that that won't change or challenge the environmental documents too greatly. With respect to the environmental clearance, our goal is to try and complete those clearances such that we can have a public hearing this coming fall. That's still the schedule and the goals that we're going through. And so we just don't know exactly when that will be. It likely will be around October, November timeframe. But that's when we'll be sharing these improvements formally with the public and getting feedback and whatnot on these changes. Our hope is that they're not too considerably different than the previous concepts. It's just how one operates the vehicles that's changed slightly. And so we think that this will basically meet everyone's needs. From a public involvement standpoint, we continue to, ADOT has a website for US 93. As we get these images completed, we'll be uploading those to the ADOT website so that the public can see them in advance of the meeting and try and keep them involved. Then one other thing is Alvin is going to be scheduling some meeting with some of the local business folks and some of especially the businesses along the Beale Street corridor. Make certain that we're addressing some of their concerns in terms of the traffic and how things are going to be maintained during construction. We are trying our best to make certain that during construction, the least amount of delays and most accommodation of traffic can be made. We're even looking at dual detour lanes, so we can keep 2 lanes of traffic open as much as possible to facilitate the traffic going through there. So what's on the screen from the NEPA process was what the previous limits were shown for our project improvements. And like I said, we just simply have to widen that exhibit to show where we're doing our improvements today so we can get those updated. So in the agenda or in the attachment that you have to the agenda, there was a deliverables matrix. It shows how we're proceeding in terms of documents that we have to create. Our big emphasis right now, if you will, is the change of access report that we're submitting to Federal Highways. A draft is being submitted later this week to ADOT so that they can review the information. Once that document clears ADOT, then it'll go to Federal Highways here in Arizona. And then once we get their comments incorporated, it goes to Washington, D.C. The whole intent is to make certain that as we go through the environmental process, we don't want to have something that's approved by the community but doesn't meet muster with respect to the interstate system and all the other reviews that we still have to receive. And so it's a dance, but so far the schedule seems to be working to allow us to put the dance together and move forward. So those are the deliverables you see. That kind of gives you an update, if you will, as to where the project is. Our focus right now on the design side, there's some details that we're having to work out in terms of the size of the bridges, the size of the openings of the local streets. We'll have more information on that as we move together on future updates. But from an agency perspective, we wanted to share with you in particular that everything that we've proposed in the past at the kickoff meeting, we are incorporating. And so that's why we wanted to share that with you today. If there's any questions that I might be able to answer from those in the crowd here today, we would like to at least suggest we might be able to answer some, depending on what the question would be. Everyone's quiet. Well, then there's a better thing for me to do, and that is the project sponsor for your local district is also here. I'm going to let Alvin speak a little bit about the improvements to make certain that you don't have any questions for Alvin. Ha.
Well, thank you. I don't really have a whole lot else to add, but I think this is we got some good solutions. I like the revisions that we're working on, and I think it's going to make it a better project for us. And again, like Berwin mentioned, once we get far enough along, we will have some business stakeholder meetings to where we can make sure everybody understands what we're doing and get all of their concerns addressed as well. And so that's really all I got. So, no, appreciate it. Yeah. No. Anybody got anything? No. Good. Well, I think you covered everything.
Our next update to you as agencies here in Kingman would be approximately 3 or 4 months away. And so we're talking about meeting either in August or September. September is likely to be the change, the date, the time frame. In September, we'll be sharing with you what are our results of our technical studies from the environmental, how that's moving forward, and then also how we're trying to reach out to make certain that for the public meeting, the information's being shared with your citizenry and your constituents. So any other things that we might be able to address in terms of this update at this time? Everybody's excited. Okay. I appreciate you coming to our meeting. We appreciate the update, and thank you very much. Have a safe drive home.